the current competitive Pokemon format, all legendary and paradox Pokemon are banned. That's a pretty big drop off in power level, and that's led to new, ordinary Pokemon taking the spotlight. No Fluttermane, for example, means that we have 4 dragons in the top 12. But unfortunately, not all of the changes are good. The number 1 Pokemon right now is Sneasler, seeing impressive usage rates at the most recent Pokemon tournaments in Lille and Louisville. There's actually debate about who's worse for the game, the infamous Urshifu or Sneasler. It's pretty funny because once upon a time, Sneasler was nowhere to be seen and now it's everywhere. But what exactly does Sneasler do, and why now? Sneasler is a poison fighting type Pokemon that you can transfer from Pokemon Legends Arceus. But interestingly, it was only released in Regulation D, and by that time a lot of Paradox Pokemon and Legendary Pokemon were already released. A poison fighting type is going to struggle when there's a Fluttermane who can outspeed and knock you out, when there's a Landorus with its ground and flying typing. Why use Sneasler anyway when you can use Urshifu instead? Sneasler at the time barely got any usage at all. But now, with all those tough Pokemon banned, Sneasler is shining and it's doing really well. Sneasler is built like a glass cannon Pokemon. It has high attack, high speed, but only average defenses. Its goal is to outspeed and destroy you. Its attacks are strong with moves like Close Combat, and its offensive type coverage is pretty good too. Fighting beats Steel for Poison, and Poison beats Fairy for Fighting. The only real stop from a typing point of view is the Ghost type, but even then, Sneasler can use a move like Throat Chop to handle it. Additionally, the type combo also rips through common Fire Water Grass cores like Incineroar, Rillaboom, Primarina. It also has a lot of good utility moves and abilities. Fake Out is one of the best moves in VGC, and Sneasler's high speed means it's very likely to use it, and it has other interesting options too, like Coaching and Swords Dance. It's actually capable of also being an incredibly good offensive support Pokemon. Its ability can either be Poison Touch or Unburden. Poison Touch is nice to try and rack up residual damage, and it's especially useful with a move like Fake Out. Unburden might seem weird on an already fast Pokemon, but activating it lets you exert total speed control. The main utility is that it lets you outspeed both Choice Scarf Pokemon and most other Pokemon in Tailwind. Being faster than every single Pokemon is a real asset, and activating it is pretty easy too. You can use it with a seed item and a terrain, or you could even use White Herb too. White Herb is great to remove the defense drop of Close Combat or to nullify Intimidate from a Pokemon like Incineroar. We've even seen Focus Sash Unburden to stop high-powered offensive teams too. It's pretty rare to see a Pokemon with 2 equally good abilities, so that aspect of Sneasler is actually pretty cool. Sneasler combos well with a lot of great Pokemon too. One popular core is Sneasler plus Dragapult. Both are fast, strong attackers with great type synergy. Sneasler can deal with Fairy type Pokemon for Dragapult, and Dragapult attacks Ghost types and Dark types like Goldengo or Dragonite or Garchomp. On top of that, Dragapult is immune to stat drop, so with White Herb Sneasler, you can shut down the best way to deal with physical attackers, which is Intimidate, and you control speed with 2 of the fastest Pokemon in the game. The winner of the Louisville Regional used a Poison Touch Sneasler with Terra Flying, that way it could combo with this Earthquake Garchomp. In total, there were 5 Sneasler in the top 8 of the tournament. On the other hand, the winner of Lille had a similar idea but with White Herb Unburden and Terra Flying for Excadrill's Earthquake. In Lille, there were 4 Sneaslers in the top 8. But that's not why people hate it. Being high usage is nothing new. People hate Sneasler because of its signature move, Dire Claw. Dire Claw has a 50% chance to inflict either poison, paralysis, or sleep. Poison is very annoying, but it's overall manageable, not too big a deal. Paralysis is potentially game-changing though. Imagine Sneasler suddenly paralyzing one of your top offensive Pokemon, or even worse, imagine if your Pokemon can't move because it keeps getting afflicted by paralysis. And of course, sleep is devastating. Imagine if all of a sudden your Pokemon can't even move anymore. Especially in a fast-paced metagame, there are plenty of situations where falling asleep is equivalent to a 1-hit KO. Honestly, it's even worse than a 1-hit KO because you can't do anything and you're also clogging up a battle spot for something else. Amoonguss' Spore is one of the best moves in Pokemon, but grass types are immune and safety goggles can be used to block it. What makes Dire Claw so terrifying is that it's more difficult to stop, and it's on a fast and strong Pokemon that is independently fantastic. There's a lot of situations where Dire Claw is a great play because it's outputting so much raw damage as well. There's nuance to it. Dire Claw isn't blind fishing. Over the aggregate, it leads to good outcomes and you'd be a fool not to use it. You might remember the Ting-Lu situation from last year where people got mad that it was using Fissure. But that situation is different from the Sneasler situation for many reasons. One is that Ting-Lu was good, but it was never the number one Pokemon like Sneasler. And number two, the all or nothing nature of Fissure meant it eventually faded away as people gravitated towards more consistent strategies. The difference here is that Dire Claw is a consistent strategy. That's why it's on so many teams. It's good plus positive luck. You have to deal with the poison fighting combo with a 50% chance to Dire Claw you on top of it, and when it's on 40% of teams like it is right now, it means a lot of games are going to come down to Dire Claw luck. A better comparison might be 2016 Smeargle, where Smeargle used Dark Void, an 80% accurate move, to try and put both Pokemon to sleep in a battle. That strategy was also both effective and RNG heavy. That being said, there is counterplay. Covert Cloak is an item that blocks secondary effects and is generally useful anyway because it also blocks Fake Out. Lumberry is a usable item on physical attackers because it also stops Will-O-Wisp. And depending on the context, Golden Go can be used to force it out of its stab attacks. Eviolite Electabuzz has Vital Spirit, is an electric type to avoid paralysis, and has Follow Me to redirect attacks. The main Guts Pokemon Ursaluna is weak to fighting, but it can terrestrialize, and Misty Surge Weezing Galar is a cute idea, but it hasn't seen mainstream success because 1, it's a Weezing, and 2, Rillaboom and Indeedee are popular as well. Realistically, Sneasler will always find a way to do Sneasler things, but there are ways to try and limit it. It's created an interesting discussion about who's worse for the game, Urshifu or Sneasler. Urshifu is a Pokemon that ignores Protect, completely destroying a fundamental mechanic of the game. You know what Urshifu's gonna do, you just can't stop it. On the other hand, Sneasler is unpredictable. It's going to use Dire Claw, yes, but you don't know what is gonna happen after that. One sleep or one paralysis changes the trajectory of the game completely. They share some similarities that they're both strong fighting type Pokemon, but they're exact opposites in why they're perceived as broken. Let me know in the comment section which one you think is worst for the game and why. But I think an interesting question is going to be what happens next. In the short term, people will adapt. In fact, they already are adapting. For example, the other finalists at the tournament had a Lumberry Dragonite. Dragonite's typing and ability make it a great Sneasler answer. But in the long term, legendaries are going to come back in January and Sneasler will undoubtedly take a hit. But will seeing Sneasler's dominance now make it more usable in the next format? There's an interesting theory that Sneasler was not actually bad, just underrated, and it could be useful again in the upcoming format. For example, maybe you could give it an Electric Seed and pair it with Miraidon, or maybe you could use Coaching along Calyrex Ice. Of course, that might be a little optimistic. After all, there's still Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow and the power level is a lot higher, but there might be room for innovation. Either way though, Sneasler has been given an opportunity, and whether you like it or not, it's definitely taking advantage.